So welcome to, well, I don't know, like an extension, but in a way like the first episode of the, newly branded GenPool Spotlight series. Um, the GenPool Spotlight series originally happened on our blog, and what we did was we looked inside under the hood with private interviews of some of the projects, block producers, um, and other important people in the EOS space. It was pretty good, but a lot of people don't always want to read, and a lot of people don't always want to, take the time to answer these interviews in person because they're super busy. So we started doing a few of these occasionally on our channel, and people seem to really connect with these and like them. So we decided to amp this up a little bit. We're going to do a few more of these. We've got the first one kind of in the new rebranded series together today. We've got Chris Barnes on the line from EOS, really. We were just talking about some other people in the EOS community. We were talking about Zach Gall and I guess like if you had to put a branding on EOS right now, it would probably be one of 5 people, and I would say like you're one of them. Like Zach would be one of them, Eve would be one of them. I guess you could maybe still say that Dan Larmer, but not really. And I'm not throwing shade at Dan at all, because he's off busy doing a lot of interesting stuff with Eden and the upcoming election. But he's kind of, intentionally removed himself from, Block One, I think, to try to get this new Eden on EOS thing up and running, and working with a lot of different community members, yourself included. So yeah, I think, you're starting to become a household name in that group of elite EOSians. I don't know how to say that.
Right.
So welcome.
Well, thanks, man. It's I think I'm 4 months kind of in this scene, sort of, so to speak. So it's I appreciate the kind words, and to be considered alongside Zach and Eve, and it's not it's still a bit surreal, to be honest. And you were one of my first that kind of broke my cherry, so to speak, of being interviewed. So I've been on a couple times with you now, so I appreciate it.
And yeah, and sure, this is why I get a bad name for myself. Breaking cherries, I'm all over the place.
I guess it's popping, but it's very general.
No, it's good. I'm not sure if that made that better or not. Yeah, and so like so for people who don't know that, like, who you are, because I think your story is a little bit different and a little bit interesting in comparison to like a lot of the OGs that came into the space, right? Do you want to just give us the brief rundown, like, where did you come from, and like what was it about like Eden that kind of got you involved in this space?
So I mean, I was following EOS since the beginning. I'm a Genesis holder, so I've always been a fan of EOS, and I occasionally chatted in the Telegram, but minimally. It's so minimal that no one knew who I was, for sure. And then I worked, I had a job, and I was a director of operations for a few industrial sized solar facilities in the US and Canada. And I had done that for 7-ish years. Prior to that, I worked in industrial wind turbines. So I worked in renewables, industrial scale, for about 12 years. And due to restructuring, classic corporate restructuring, I was laid off in March of this year, right at the end of March. And so sort of had a severance package. So that's, helped. And I was sort of, what do I do next? And I'd always wanted to get involved in blockchain in some way. I just didn't know how. I'm not a developer. I'm not a coder. But and then I saw this. I started to, right when Dan was first doing pretty frequent AMAs and announced this Eden thing, this project called Eden. I started taking notes during some of those calls, and I would post the notes on the forum, figuring I'm a fast typer. I can type as fast as he can talk for the most part. So I got the notes out right away, and I thought that was a good service for the community. It helped me learn about what Eden was, since I was trying to pay attention on those Monday calls. And then I participated in the first trial election on May 14th and happened to win that first trial election. And from there, I've just sort of stuck with working towards this Eden project, whatever it's kind of it means many things. But Eden on EOS at a minimum is just to, as I see it, to take community funding and select representatives or delegates to then spend that funding in a way that the community deems is beneficial for the EOS ecosystem. So I just kind of working on that, living off of my severance package, and now the timing is good because that's running out, and the first official properly funded election is on October 9th. So I'm hopeful that I'll still continue to do well.
We need we need a series of NFTs or memes that like just facial expressions of people that say like what, because like that should be one of them. But so I'll give you a good example. Like in my case, right? Like my missus, some of her friends, they ask, oh, what does your husband do for a living? And she's like, it's like he talks on the internet.
Yeah.
It's like, what, huh? What does he talk about? Like blockchain, crypto stuff. Huh?
Yeah.
In your case, I think where I'm going with this is really, in what world do we live in whereby you kind of get laid off, you get let go, and of course the severance package helps, but you get laid off, you let go, and we live in a world where like blockchain and decentralization allows you essentially to walk into a new life and become involved in a community that is actually, procuring some governance models that could potentially change like the whole world, not just the EOS space or the crypto space, right? And I think that's like most people haven't figured out the empowering ability of blockchain on so many levels yet. And when they do, I think we're going to see a lot of cases where people like yourself who are, entrepreneurially minded can kind of say, oh, wait a minute, like I can do the same thing over here. Maybe I make a little bit less money to start, but in the end, I'm
a lot less.
A shit ton happier though, right? Like,
it's and that's even though I worked in renewables and a lot of it's a good industry to be in. It's good for the planet. Certainly, all that is true, but it doesn't mean it's personally fulfilling and rewarding. And in light of all the chaos in the world and questionable leadership, to put it mildly, Eden, all of a sudden, like on the very first episode I was with you, and I got to put my my gratitude on one of those stones, and it was hope, because Eden gave me hope that maybe there's another way we can select leaders. Maybe there's a way that democracy can be done differently, and the actual voting people, the plebs of the world, actually can have a voice. And I know it's outlandish and it's lofty, and it's not what a lot of EOS people want to hear, because they want to hear EOS, let's get the price of EOS up. And I don't disagree, and that's certainly the focus. But in terms of a bigger picture and where a lot of my heart resides, I've got kids, and I don't want them to grow up in the world that I see coming in the next 15, 20 years. Like it's a bit of a scary, dark place potentially. And this Eden process shines a bit of light. There's hope here. Like it's super difficult, super ambitious. So I'm going to get myself on some sort of assassination list if this becomes overly popular, maybe, right? Because this could entirely disrupt the status quo, and this could break up the entire leadership control structure of the planet potentially. So I mean, I'm still focused on EOS and baby steps to bigger things, but yeah, that's kind of a lot of the reason why I'm here.
Yeah, I mean, one of my best friends, he worked as an environmental lawyer in the U.S. and like in California, no doubt. And basically, he quit after a couple of years because he's just like, I can't do this. I can't go up against like the American military when they're like wiping out islands for practice training and things like this, and keep my sanity, right? So I think a lot of people get confused that like just because you're doing something good for the world, you have a fulfilling life. In most cases, I would say it's actually the opposite, because the world isn't there yet, right? They're not ready for it, right? Yeah. And so like when you are able, so I'm a philosopher. That's what I studied in school. And like Plato, always his model for governance was always, that the people who were governing, they shouldn't be paid. They should be doing it like as a volunteer kind of activism, and they should be like kind of taken care of by the state, right? Like think in terms of like Eastern, well, I guess Western religions in a way too, but think in terms of like Eastern religions, a lot of these like priests that work at these temples, right? Like they don't pay for anything. Everything is pretty much donated or given to them, right? And I guess like Plato's kind of model for governance was just that, right? Like we need to keep financial funding from the state out of governance, right? Of the state, because that way we don't have the situation now where like we've got, you know, people rallying in Washington for, you know, certain funds and things like that. So I'm just kind of curious, like, how do you see this working? Because I guess in your case might be a little bit different than other people's cases, because when you won the first kind of mock election, you threw your weight behind Boyd to do the EOS power up type of model, whereby people could get resources. Right now, this doesn't benefit you at all, actually. Like that's 100% pro bono, right?
Yep.
I guess in other cases, if it's your project that you're throwing out your support for, then that kind of does benefit you. But how do you see this kind of playing out? Because now with the actual, you know, big election coming, like the first, you know, election proper, like the funding model is quite big, right? Like that there's a lot of EOS that's set to go out into the, you know, winning places.
It's gone up a lot. Yeah, that's it. It's a tricky one, right? I wrestle with this a lot. You don't, as soon as you start getting paid for something, that might subvert or change the way you approach things because you have self-interest and self-preservation clouding maybe some of your decisions. So in this case, I'm trying to stay very focused on EOS. This is Eden on EOS, right? The Eden is a process. It's a method by which we can come to consensus. That's from Dan's book, More Equal Animals. But Eden on EOS is now taking that process and applying it to the EOS blockchain. So personally, I'm trying to find ways that I can add value to the ecosystem while staying really involved. And maybe I kind of see myself as a bit of a community builder, and I try to be really available, and I try to answer questions in the Telegram chats, and I try to facilitate community and member onboarding into the membership. And so it's like, how do I add value? What can I do that adds value that doesn't of course, I don't want to be dependent. So I'm working on other things. Like Eden on EOS is not my only project. I'm also doing some energy related work that I hope can turn into a fruitful opportunity that's also very much tied to EOS. So it's not exclusive, but it's not part of Eden by any stretch. And yeah, it's a tricky one. I don't know how Eden as an organization, without core funding to fund core roles that help grow an organization, you end up being dependent on each respective election and the individuals that rise to the top and receive funding. So either people are just going to always be volunteering some of these core facilitator type roles, or it gets delegated to those who receive funding and move their way up. It's just not all those people might really be into that. Like, I think a lot of people are going to move up in an election because they have a project they want to build. They're not really going to be into answering a lot of Telegram questions and having a 2-hour Zoom call every morning to help with people getting inducted and do a Monday night open mic for 3 hours every Monday night that I've been doing for quite a few weeks now. So I don't know how that's going to play out over time. For myself, I'm still committed. I'm here. I treat this like a part-time job. And so if I do well in the next election, I'm going to openly suggest I'm going to pay myself with my winnings, and I'll be very transparent and very open about super like $30 an hour rate or something is all I'm gonna, like fractions of what I was making before as an executive basically in renewable. I did quite well prior, but so, and I'm going to be an auditor. One of the services I'm going to offer in the next election is that of an auditor, and I think I've developed a lot of trust in the community thus far. I'm not a politician. I'm not overly polished at times, for sure. I'll misspeak. But I think people trust me and they see that I'm a real person, and that hopefully, I mean, I don't know, I go off the rails sometimes. I get passionate. It happens. But I'm going to be an auditor, and I'm going to audit basically any recipient of community funds. I'm going to try to create a relationship and help them disclose what they're doing with those funds. Are they meeting milestones? Are they running into issues? And that'll be recipients of Pomelo grants, recipients from the EOS Foundation, and recipients from Eden is what I'm going to attempt to do if I succeed in the election. That'll be a service I'll offer.
This can be your new campaign T-shirt, right? I'm not just the run-of-your-mill, person who takes your money for governmental use. I'm not, I'm not your run-of-the-mill polished politician.
No, I don't want to be. I mean, it would. I don't. I'm not horribly spoken, but the last thing I want to be is some sort of polished douchebag of sorts, and I'll spin every difficult question and not answer it directly. So ask a hard question. I'll give you an honest answer without making it too vulgar or offending too many people. I'll try to at least be reasonable. But you know what I mean?
Well, I think you do. I think you do a good job because, like, you're like me, right? Like, you're long-winded, you're fairly detailed with your answers, but like by the time you get to the end, then I forgot what I was going to ask before. So we're like, it's a new way forward for governance. That's how you need to do it. Instead of ducking and dodging, you go in, head first. Sure. I think like it's going to be really interesting to see how this election, changes. There's a lot of people that have been inducted just, in the last 2 or 3 months. Since, the second mock election. And these people are not necessarily people that we ever thought would put their face out there. Whether it's because they like to remain in the shadows or whether it's because they're not necessarily like your run-of-the-mill EOS OGs. They might be like podcasters or crypto people from other space. So I think that's really interesting. So what do you think? Because I mean, one of the problems with a lot of crypto or a lot of people in crypto, and I think this goes with like any media, right? But in crypto in general, it's a little bit different because one of the problems is that a lot of people like to hide behind their avatars, or like they like to hide behind their names, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not just talking about like spammers or people who are fudding projects or people who are hyping projects. I'm talking about in general, right? Because there's so much lack of regulation among all these countries in the world that a lot of people feel like they want to kind of keep themselves hidden. But there's a lot of people who have had that idea that have actually come out and put their name on the Eden list, knowing full well that essentially they're going to have to out themselves, right? Right? Like your profile picture needs to be on there. Yeah. And technically, right, you're supposed to use your real name. Like I outed myself, I had to use my real name and but I outed myself for that. I'm just kind of curious. What is it? Yeah, I found that out later. Thanks. Thanks, people who harassed me in the comments. Edeners, you. What do you think makes it? What do you think is the appeal for people to actually, step outside that little comfortable mind box that they're in, and be like, okay, you know what? I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to put my name out there in the name of EOS. Hold up your sword and yell, Master of Castle Grayskull, cute video now.
Great question. So to me, it's the reason why people are willing to do this who may have otherwise not is because it feels natural. Humans, we didn't evolve in an anonymous, pseudonymous world. We evolved in small tribes, and everyone knew each other, and you only knew Dunbar's number, like less than 100 people probably your entire life. You didn't travel anywhere, and that was how we evolved. Our evolutionary biology, or evolutionary psychology for that matter, that was done in a not anonymous world. And the ability to be anonymous, metropolises, big cities, it's like a curse for humanity, because now if you knew, if it was a small town and someone cuts you off, you'd know who that driver was. You're not going to give them the finger and try to cut them off and have road rage because you know the person. But now in big cities, people can be assholes to each other because they can get away with it. You can be anonymous and an asshole. So it almost like it encourages this negative side of humanity to turn into a dick. And same with digital relationships. Now if you can be anonymous, you can be a jerk. And I don't think that helps people. It doesn't help the soul feel good. There's something that's not natural about that. And whether you recognize it or not, all the trolls and all the people who jump into a call anonymously and try to like break it up, that, that's not a good thing for your heart. And karma and all those things, like humans, we're special beings, and we're meant to have a community where we can look each other in the face and talk to each other and make a connection. And Eden allows for that. Eden is the beginning of a digital community where you can't hide behind an avatar, and you have to be you. And it's a bit, it's difficult. I mean, you have to be exposed. It's a little vulnerable at times, and that's hard because we're not used to it necessarily, especially even in people who live in suburbs. They don't even know their neighbor. I mean, the idea of connection in humanity is just becoming further and further eroded, whether it's deliberate or not, by those that attempt to control us. So I see this as a great opportunity for people to kind of reconnect and reform some actual bonds. And even though it's a camera, even though I'm looking at you on a screen, I still kind of feel more connected to you than if it were just over the phone, even for that matter. Like, there's something to this that I think is, it captures people, and I think it's going to spread.
Yeah, I think I've never thought about it that way, but that's a really good analogy, the small town, megalopolis city analogy that you threw out there. I like that a lot. Yeah, it kind of threw me for a bit of a loop there to put my mind into that state. Being from a small town.
You're from a small town. Yeah, you grew up that way.
Right.
Yeah, you understand.
Yeah, totally. And like living in one of the world's like biggest cities now, even though it's one of the most passive cities probably in the world. But yeah, it's interesting just to ponder how people are going to interact in the future. So Eden on EOS, I have another question for you as well. Structurally, the way that it's set up is the person who I guess wins the election, right? Like, they'll get some funding allocated to them. So there's a couple of things here. Mr. Pompliano put out a tweet yesterday or the day before, which I loved. I thought this was great. And he was referencing campaign promises, basically.
Okay.
And the tweet went, let's see if I can find it here. Something like this. He puts out a lot of tweets. We're way down here. Let's see.
Probably something around campaign promises are always broken.
Yeah, it was exactly that. I know where I can find it. Anyway, I wanted to read the original because it was just so much better than my rendition of it. He really is a good wordsmith in some ways. Yeah, but basically what he said was, the gist of it was, if the politicians want to tax us for unrealized capital gains, we should be able to tax them for unrealized campaign promises. And I thought, like, this, just to me, this is hilarious. Like, I love the fact that he actually put two and two together. And it made me think of Eden, actually, in a way. Because one of the interesting things about Eden is, I won't go on my governance blockchain rant and funding, because people have heard that before. But it made me think of one of the key cornerstones of Eden, which you're always talking about, is that when you get the funding, or you want to change the rules, the funding and the rules are a little bit different, right? So you just can't you can get the funding and then you can do what you want to do, but that's allocated in smaller segments, so that you can't just run away with the funds. So that's one key point, which I think is great.
Yeah.
And the second key point is that, like, when it comes to the actual overall governance structure of the organization, you can't really change it during your term, right? Like Correct. All of the proposals that are made actually, happen retroactively when it comes to the organizational foundation. So those are two things that I really like about it. Now, what I want to ask then is, because there's a lot of things that get convoluted in my brain here, but I think this is just an interesting case study, right? Like, Eden on EOS was set up as a governance model that doesn't even necessarily have to be on blockchain, right?
Correct.
Now what we have is we have people who are basically going to be funded through the initiatives of Eden to be able to, quote unquote, build the EOS ecosystem. Now, what if I came in and I've got a great idea for funding, and I convince everyone that funding my project in Wax is actually a smarter thing to be able to do, or funding my project in Ethereum is actually a smarter thing to be able to do, and I win that election? Is that a possibility? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this question later, but is that a possibility?
Yes.
So for anyone who's saying that EOS is centralized, here's your chance to prove yourself wrong. Because if anyone from any blockchain could potentially come in and win it in this open source election and get those funds, you know, to do what we all criticize Block One of doing, and like, you know, going beyond their borders, right? Then that actually speaks to the true power of decentralization right there. Now, I'm not expecting this to happen, but I mean, and I'm not expecting the fudders to ever, you know, I get down on their knees and say, I'm sorry, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, you said it though. If you could convince the other people in the room to have you move forward, that's the key piece there. So you would have to somehow make, I mean, Eden is full of, it's Eden on EOS, that's the name of it. And people who are entered have an EOS account. I mean, you need an EOS account to become an Eden member. The context is that this is about taking EOS community funds to do things that are good for EOS. But if you can create a compelling enough argument that by taking the funding that you hope to receive and building something on Ethereum, if it's good for EOS, then you might be able to convince people to do that. There's no rules. There's an underlying agreement called a peace treaty that we all agree to. We agree to abide to that peace treaty as being members. Nothing in that peace treaty says that thou shalt spend funding on certain types of projects. It's not there. In fact, the peace treaty mentions nothing about funding, really. It's more about community and just basic sets of rules and respect that we have to have. But the process itself is the election is amongst peers, just plebs, right? That's why someone like myself can win who have never knew anybody, yet I was able to convince people to vote for me. And so you don't have to be famous. You don't have to you don't have to be an OG to do well. Those aren't prerequisites. You have to be believable and trustworthy and have a reasonably good idea and an ability to express that idea to convince other people to trust you and vote for you, to build consensus. So yeah, you could absolutely win an election and build something on Wax. It's highly unlikely. I think you'd have a hard time getting through with that type of proposal because people are like, well, why wouldn't you build it on EOS? And why would you build, like, are you going to pay Ethereum devs for that? Like, how is this going to benefit? Like, so the questions hopefully are sufficient that you wouldn't be able to. I mean, and the other thing is if you just blatantly lie. So you could go through the process and just spew out a bunch of garbage, and then as soon as you get the money, see you later, I'm gone. And so that can happen. There's no denying that there's a chance, but the amount of money that's available, like you mentioned, it trickles out. So the Eden Treasury at the time of the election is going to be over 250,000 EOS. So price of EOS, say it's $4, whatever, it's $1 million. That's the full treasury. Only 5% of the treasury is allocated per month to the winners of the previous election. So right now it's looking like, as of October 9th, it'll be roughly 12,500 EOS will be allocated. 1/3 of that will go to the winner. 1/3 of that will be split amongst the layer below the winner, which might be 4 other people. And then 1/3 is split amongst those below that layer, which maybe be 16 to 20 people. Depends how many people enter the election and how the division works. But so could one of those people just leave with the money and not do what they said they were going to do? Yes, they could. If it's sufficiently bad, like if it's the winner who does this, then there's a good chance we'll call a snap election. There's a method by which a snap election can be called. 1 month later, an election's called, and that person is no longer able to walk away with more money because it's recognized they're basically not doing what they said they do. How do we check what they said they do? Every single discussion throughout this election is recorded on a video call with people's cameras turned on. And those video calls are uploaded to IPFS. So anyone can go back and check everything that I said I do in the elections to get me to win the first one and be the symbolic winner of the second trial election. You can check and see what I said I do, and then you can confirm whether I did it or not, because I put blog posts up showing every single transaction and explaining everything that I did. So I'm trying to set a standard of accountability that's probably above and beyond what might have even been expected, but I'm hoping that at least the standard that I'm setting, and the other members of the board, the chief delegates, the final round, we're all doing it right now. We do every Monday. We just did our 11th board meeting on Monday. We'll do our 12th final board meeting this coming Monday. And we've done weekly meetings recorded on Zoom, uploaded to YouTube for people to watch, unedited for that matter, and an actual written summary. Every week we've done that to let people know what are we doing with the 2,000 EOS that was 2,500 EOS was what we got from the last election, the second trial election on July 17th. So
I'm glad you brought that like back around, full circle in a couple of areas, right? And again, like this is why I thought of Eden when I read that, Pompliano comment, right? Like because Eden does actually put that into place, those structures whereby you can, in a sense, hold the people who won accountable on a financial level, which I think is really nice. The other thing that strikes me as unique or different or strange about Eden, which I never really pieced together until recently, was this mock election type of thing. Like when we say mock election, oftentimes people snub their nose. Oh, it's just a fake election or whatever. But it allowed two things. It allowed us to work out the kinks. And I wasn't complaining, but as you know, like I was vocal about a couple of the issues that I had. We talked about it on another show. We don't need to rehash that. But over time, I was thinking, okay, well, that's one positive benefit. But what I'm actually really interested to see is this first election that's coming up. We're going to have something happen that's really never happened before. We're going to have the likes of Dan Larmer, some of these other OG kind of Eden members participating in these elections for the first time. I shout out to someone like Luke Stokes, for example, who is one of these, I think, one of these foundational Eden members, but he always participated in the mock election.
He did, yeah.
That's a really loud airplane. Sorry.
I can't hear it. No, it's okay.
And Dan Larmer didn't.
He did not. No, he was funding those trials.
Right, he was funding them. He didn't, right? And so it got me thinking, like, what would have happened if we just came out of the gate with the, foundational members and said, okay, everyone can come in and they can vote. This is kind of, right? It might have turned into one of these, like, kind of, well-intentioned DAX structures that kind of misses the point, because then you've got a bunch of people who are in there making all the decisions as well. So what I'm curious to see is, like, how... again, because of the amount of FaceTime that you've had and the amount of effort and hard work you've put in, I would put you in the upper echelon of people, that represents the potential positivity of where this whole Eden process is going now. But like you said, like, a few months ago, you were relatively like an unknown, right? Like nobody knew who you were. Now you have all of these shows that you do, right? Podcasts that you do. Like, again, back to Zach. Zach opened his channel up to anyone who wanted to come on there. I mean, you were one of the few people who actually went on there and started some shows. And so people are starting to know you. So I'm going to take you out of this. But there's a lot of other people in there that are really instrumental in how this process works. Some of them inducted me. Josh is another one, for example. Earthman, like a few of these people who are just this core of this mock election structure. How do you think that these people, some of these people, are going to fare when it gets opened up and the big name people come in? And like, I'm not throwing shade at anyone. I just think it's going to be a really interesting dynamic to see, like, are people still diehard Larmer fans where they're just going to vote Larmer no matter what? Or are they actually going to vote along the lines of the process? I actually think the latter is going to happen. Like, I'd actually be surprised if, like, Dan won the first election. I mean, I hope, if he's got a good plan for it and he wins it, that's great. But I'd actually like to see him not win it. Like, I think it would be good for EOS overall if he didn't just walk in and win it. Like, I'm just kind of curious on your thoughts.
It's a great question. Yeah, I mean, guys like Brock Pierce, for example, Crystal Rose, those are Genesis members as well. And we've tweeted, hopefully Brock just shows up even for the first round, right? Not looking to move forward. So there's two things. One is, this is for funding, and so some of the people like Dan, I don't think needs the money, in all fairness, and neither does Brock. So if they show up, I hope that's there. And I don't, So I think that's part of it, right? This is to move forward, to receive community funding, to then spend it. If someone enters this election and we know that they're quite well to do, I hope they have enough humility to maybe vote for someone else to move forward. I hope they don't try to, I hope. I mean, who knows?
I think it's less of a matter of like, do they vote, or do people in that room of four look at them and they're just so used to being
Sure.
so well spoken that like it's
Yeah.
like, you know what, Brock, like, okay, like I got a good idea, but like as we saw in the first mock election, right? As there was that case with, I think you were in the same room, but there was that case with Eve and yourself and a couple other people. I
I
forget who
wasn't in
they.
that room. Yeah,
Oh no,
that
it was John. It was John
John
Boyd
Heater,
and sorry, John Heater and Eves
Luke,
and
Eve.
like as people were going through, they kept adding to the platform, right? So I could see someone like Brock or Dan being like, "Oh, that's a great idea. I never thought about that." And then everyone pushes him through, and like in your case where they actually end up donating the money to another platform that they're not even involved in. I can see that more happening than them being like, "Oh yeah, give us the money. We want to fund
Sure.
we want to fund Sense Chat or something like that," right? Like
the other thing to consider, so one thing Dan has said this many times, the winner is randomly chosen, a process called sortition. So right there, the odds of Dan or Brock or these bigger folks actually winning is lessened because it's chance. So that's one thing that's key that will matter. And I think those who are voting, hopefully, I mean, there's a lot of people who are just starstruck, and that's fine, and I get that. Hopefully, though, they are listening to the ideas and they're listening. And the question is, Dan, if you win, how much time are you going to dedicate to this? I think you mentioned earlier, he's not as present and doing other things. Okay, is that going to change? Like, if he's in a room with me, I'm super involved, I'm super committed. Can Dan match my commitment in terms of time and presence and availability? Maybe yes. Maybe his answer is yeah. I'm gonna open myself up and be more available. In which case, okay. But I think to the other, if it was Dan, myself, and two other people in the room, they know I've been around. They know I have consistent presence, and so I might have a chance against someone like Dan, and so might someone like say Josh, right? And other guys who have been doing a lot for the community, but aren't Dan. Like they didn't build EOS, right? So I think we have a chance. I think by putting in the hard work, I hope anyway. Selfishly, I hope, of course, because it's a benefit to me. But I think in general, people are going to hopefully recognize and see that a lot of people put in a lot of work, and hopefully that work continues for the betterment of Eden. It's not just the money; it's about the time.
Yeah, and obviously, I'm not saying that Dan or Brock or Crystal or any of these people don't deserve to win because we don't know. They haven't been in there. They haven't pitched their platform. Maybe
it'd be great
they
to just show up. I think if Brock and Crystal just showed up for the first round would be incredible. Just to have them there and have them participate would be really great for
the whole thing. Like it adds a whole nother aspect. It's like a lottery. Like what happens if you end up in a room with Dan, right? Like if you're in Eden, you probably respect what he stands for. And like now you actually get like a platform to be able to say, hey, this is my idea. And it's almost bragging rights. Like, hey, I got Dan to vote for me. Like it's like, right? Like it's going to be really interesting. And I just think it's, again, like I'm not saying that none of these people deserve to win. But what we often find in this community or in the real business world is the people with the status, especially in real politics, right? The people with the status, they're the ones that walk away with the title, and then everyone gets annoyed because they didn't hold themselves accountable, right? And we saw this in block one, right? Now, I honestly believe that Dan's hands were tied in block one. I believe that he wasn't able to do all the things that he wanted to do, which is why he resigned, essentially, and came out with Eden and is, progressing things forward in that way and in other ways. Mm-hmm. But it still doesn't really solve the problem of people beyond EOS who are fudders who are saying, oh, like he just left and, look, like it doesn't accomplish anything. And I mean, obviously, most of those people aren't building shit. There's like even among your top echelon of like blockchain developers, it's very rare to see someone overtly critical of Dan, right? Like rarely do you see even like Vitalik or Charles Hoskinson, right? Like they might be critical of block one, but they're not critical of Dan, right? Like they're not like, oh, he sucks, he's a scammer, or like it's not those people you have to worry about. It's the media trolls that kind of give us all a bad name. But yeah, like that's just my take. And thanks for like putting that out there, because that's kind of the way that I view it as well. So
yeah, I just checked. So Brock and Crystal are not yet, they've not yet opted into the election, but Luke Stokes has, and Dan has. I can check some other one here. Curious is Eva Rose. I'm wondering if he might participate. I hope so. I can't find him. Anyway, sorry, I'm looking through.
Again, though, like you mentioned, like it's difficult, right? Like, do you?
Well,
it happens
some
to
people
be
have no time, like
right.
Like Zach and Eve, like I don't think they have the time to
right.
truly show up in the first round, use their voice, right, express and participate. But I think some people, there's a time commitment here. You're going to receive community funding. You're going to make some promises. That's not going to go without some time later. And if people are crazy busy, then you got to kind of temper that. How far you want to move forward with how much you can do.
Yeah, so it's not too late. If you're interested in being part of the Eden election, I know that there's some inductions happening next week even.
Yes.
What's the deadline for this? Like, when do you have to have all the paperwork essentially signed to be able to participate? Like, I mean, I guess it takes, I don't know, it takes a few hours after the induction ceremony to get everything into place if you're on the ball, right? Like less than a few hours potentially, right? You just have to take the photo, upload it, get that membership card minted. So I guess like the day before you could potentially do it, but just to give people a general idea, how long do they have to get themselves into a place where they could participate in this election if they wanted to?
So ideally, I think you have to, I don't know when the opt-in deadline is. I mean, election starts 9 a.m. October 9th, Eastern, 9 a.m. Eastern time. It says if you cannot attend, you must choose I do not want to participate by October 8th at 9 a.m. So I don't know if you don't sign up by October 8th, you can't. So let's assume October 8th is your deadline. So become a member by then. But ideally, become a member or at least start your initiation process by next Monday, this coming Monday, October 4th. Because the EOS Network Foundation has committed to give an extra 200 EOS per Eden member or per pending invitation. So both Eden member, current Eden member, and pending invitation combined, 200 EOS per person additionally goes into the Eden Treasury. So right now there's 250 active members with 11 pending invitations. So that's over 50,000 more EOS will now go into the Eden Treasury to be then distributed at 5% per month given out to the winners. So certainly if you're thinking about joining, try to get in before October 4th because you help boost up the Treasury.
Yeah, and like you said, you can just go and you can participate in the first election. You can push someone through.
You don't have to spend a lot of time. Just the first round, it's 50 minutes, and you might even be done early. Like it just at least, and you don't even have to. If you want to just become an Eden member, not even show up for the election, you still help. But you want to participate, be there, then do it because you can still help with the Treasury piece. The election itself, a lot of people aren't looking to move forward. They're just there in that very first round to vote for someone else to move forward, and that's great. That's excellent to at least do that. You get to have your opinion heard. If you have some thoughts and wishes and desires for EOS, say that to the person you're going to push forward, because they're going to take some of your ideas. And this is where this form of democracy is so different, because now you can actually influence the representative that moves up, and they're going to move into the next round and be in a group of people. And they're going to say, hey, Joe, in my last round, he said that, we should do this, this, and this. And then and even if that person that Joe, in this example, voted for to go to the first round after that, even though he may not move on to the finish, the person that he speaks to might move up. So your ideas can still filter their way up to the winner. So it's very, it's meaningful to participate and express yourself.
So you said one thing that might be confusing to people, right? Like you need to opt in to the election, but you said you must opt out. I'm not sure if you
don't have
that.
To.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
It's only if you've opted in. So it's basically you don't have to opt out, but if you've opted in, and yeah, thank you for clarifying. And then you change your mind that you can't participate, then you need to then opt out before October 8th. But generally, when you become a member, you don't have any commitment to show up unless you then opt in. So it's an affirmative action to become a participant in the election. Otherwise, you're just a member in good standing and you don't have to worry. And there's no, as of now, there's no penalty for not participating. So there's no pressure like that.
So what happens if you fail to opt out and you don't show up? Are there repercussions to that?
Not yet. Not in terms of, so it doesn't affect the election process. The guys on the Clarion team, Brandon Fancher, Todd Fleming, Thomas Hallgren, Mike Manfredi, those guys, brilliant dudes. And they've actually set it up so that if someone's opted in, they're then going to be randomly organized into groups. So that first round is a random organization using Bitcoin block headers. That's the source of randomization. And they're going to be sorted into groups. If it turns out someone doesn't show up and you've got a group of 5, for example, one person doesn't show up, you only have 4 left. In order to have someone move forward, in order to achieve consensus, you need over 66% of the people, 2/3 plus 1, to vote for one person, and they have to vote for themselves. So if one person leaves, you could have 4 people or 3 people even vote for one person, but you're missing that vote. That missing person's vote will then go towards the majority that's still left in the room. So for example, say you had 5 people supposed to be in a room, 4 of them don't show up, or a couple of them show up, but their internet craps out on them, or they can't figure out how to vote properly on their phone because it's all on chain. This is all done through a web app now. And they somehow can't, they screwed up. As long as one person's there and they vote for themselves, the rest of the votes will go to
right.
them.
That's what I was gonna say, and then I had this weird like Sopranos thing happening in the back of my mind, right? Like the only way to ensure that you can go through by doing absolutely nothing is that you're the only person in the room.
That's right. Yeah, you gotta take out the other people.
However, because of the way that the process is set up, you actually won't know who you're in the room with until like basically right before the time happens, right? So
absolutely. That's part of it's hard to game because you don't know in advance who you're going to be up against. So you don't know in advance who you need to bribe. So you could bribe somebody. You could reach out to them in Telegram and not do it on the video call. And hey, man, I'll pay you off. And power to you. Do that. Try it. But if you get caught out and you get burned for that and it becomes known, your reputation in the community is going to go to shit. And there's a good chance you won't do well in the next election, or you'll just get kicked out altogether.
Well, so, I could just see that. Like, can you imagine, like, me and you, a few other people in a room with one guy who messages us, hey, well, I'll give you like a quarter of the funds if you vote for me. I'm not going to do anything. Like, we're going to out them in the meeting for all to see, right? Like, there's not going to be.
I look forward to the day when someone tries to bribe me because, I please try so I can just prove how it's a wasted opportunity. Because someone's going to do it eventually.
I almost want to try just to see what your reaction will be, but that's going to screw me.
Well,
so
from
I'm not gonna do
you,
that.
I'll know you're kidding. So at least, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But because it came up, I'm sure you remember that first trial election when that room you mentioned, when it was Luke, John Heater, Eve, and I think Han. Yeah, Han Rue was the other guy. And basically, Eve had sweetened the pot, so to speak, where he said, John, okay, we're all going to vote for you, but I'm going to give you an extra 1,000 EOS. He was going to donate it to Pomelo, which is a kind of like a quadratic funding crowd worker proposal system type thing that's getting built on EOS right now. Should be out any week, hopefully. He said, John, if you move on, when you go to the next round and you're in your round of people there and you're all, jostling with who's going to win, just let them all know, keep this in your back pocket, that Eve said he'd give you an extra 1,000 EOS, which is like double because it was only 1,000 EOS prize at the time, if they vote for John. So it wasn't bribing per se. It was just an offer to make it a better deal. And then when John got to the next round, I was in it with Ami and a few, and we were in Mike Manfredi, and we were like, ooh, I mean, I don't know, because we'd all kind of decided we were going to vote for John because I was representing John anyway. So it's like, well, don't vote for me. Just give it to John. I mean, I'm here representing him, so I don't need to win. Just give it to the guy who's going to do the work anyway. But then we realized, oh, we're kind of changing our mind because we almost kind of changed. We were going to use me because I was going to give John the money, but then I could spend, I would kind of advertise on his behalf and try to like tweet and help. But then we realized, oh, John said this part, but if I win, I get an extra 1,000 EOS. And we were all like, oh yeah, okay, sure, why not? It's an extra 1,000 EOS. And then we sort of like, wait a minute, we're kind of changing, we're allowing this extra outside influence affect what we were about to vote for. We were about to change our votes because of it. And it was like this neat thing. It's all on video. It's fun to watch. And everyone's like, no, we can't now. Now we can't vote for you, John, because this is like almost like feels wrong. Even though it wasn't wrong, it felt wrong. So we didn't. We ended up voting for me and we didn't get the extra 1,000 EOS.
Yeah, and that's the key, right? It is all on video, so anyone can go back and watch this, at any given time, which I think is really cool. So, again, the election is October the 8th, 9 a.m.
October 9th.
Sorry, October the 9th.
Saturday, October 9th, 9 a.m. Eastern.
Right, so the opt-in is October 8th. Sorry, October 9th, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right?
Yeah.
So that's
pretty exciting. There's a lot of people who are kind of preparing the inductions. We're doing 5 to a day. It feels like every morning, Monday to Thursday. We do in the Eden Telegram channels, the public one. I post a link, and from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern, we do these open induction hours. So if you're an Eden member and you're trying to coordinate that whole induction video thing, come onto that open call and bring the person you want to invite, and I'll be there along with someone else, and we'll help you with your induction video to help just facilitate that and speed it up.
So this one's on a Friday, 9 a.m. in the morning. Call in sick for an hour, I guess.
The election's Saturday. No, it's Saturday.
Oh, sorry. I did I look at that the wrong way?
Yeah, it's Saturday, like Eastern time zone in Saturday, October 9th. Yeah.
Sorry,
but you're in Japan, so it's extra confusing for you.
October 9th, right? Sorry, I was looking at the 8th again. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. So October 9th, it is a Saturday, so that's good. Better than a Sunday. I'm probably going to have to register for this one. I haven't done that yet. So again, walk us through the process. If you are an Eden member, where do you go to get registered? Let's do that one first.
Yeah, you go to the web portal. So if you're already a member, you know the portal. It's what you use to fill out your profile, and everyone endorsed you. So that website, which is genesis.eden.eoscommunity.org. If you go there, then there's a button right on the home page. You log in. So you log in with your wallet. Your Eden account is tied to an EOS account. So log in with that EOS account, and you'll see on the home page there's a big blue button halfway down that says sign. Well, mine says I do not want to participate because I've already signed up, but it would have said something along the lines of I want to participate. So click on that and then sign your transaction with your Anchor wallet, and you're in. Right now there's 112 members participating, and that's been going up steadily. And then if you change your mind, it turns out you can't, then you just click on the I do not want to participate, and you'll opt out.
I want to put that in the notes. What is it again? Genesis?
It's genesis.eden.eoscommunity.org.
That's what I did wrong. There was a missing thing, .org.
And there's an election password that you're given when you opt in. So you want to save that. But apparently if you lose that, there's another way to get it. So
yeah, there would have to be. I mean, that would be a pretty... I've heard things from the Clarion team, and they seem to know what's going on. They seem to got a grasp. So if that was the Achilles heel of the whole process, it would make me chuckle. Actually, so, what? Well, you lost your password? You can't communicate?
Show up a little early too. You're right. At 8:30 Eastern, that's when it really kicks off. There's going to be one Zoom room that's like everyone can join that Zoom room, so 112 people. And I think Dan's going to do a little opening chat just to kick it off, and then at 9 o'clock it will start. So you've got a bit of time, but yeah, definitely wise to maybe get your realizing I need to do this because I'm not sure where my password went, and I'll need to make sure I find it.
Right. Yeah. So if you haven't seen it before, this is essentially the site, and I'll drop that in the comments below. Now, in terms of getting inducted, generally speaking, the process, if you're not familiar of getting inducted, you don't have to have any, prior connections or wants or, associations with EOS at all. But generally speaking, what you need to do is you need to find someone that will nominate you. And usually, that person can probably rally a few other people to come on, and there's like a little ceremony that's done. And that kind of, ensures that we're not just letting bots and things like that in as well. And there's a whole process, right? Like, I mean, I respect the process. I was a little bit annoyed. I'll put it that way. But I'm just putting this out there so that people know. I got a message back from a really good friend of mine, actually, who said, yeah, Jimmy, we're going to need you to upload a better profile photo because yours is a little bit grainy. And I'm just like, right? Like, I'm like, okay, fine. Like, everybody knows who I am. But like my annoyance is actually respect for the system, that the people are taking this.
At least they're checking. Yeah,
right?
At least they checked, right? Because that's what this is, civil protection. No bots, no sock puppets. Exactly. Like real people have to sign up. And that's part of the reason why there's a video induction video. There's a video with a witness, two witnesses, and the inviter and the person who's being invited shows up on a video call, a Zoom call, all 4 of you, which are recorded, uploaded to IPFS as well. But part of the job as a witness is to, like, yes, I saw that person, I can see their face right now, and that matches the profile picture that they uploaded. If someone's got a profile picture and they're wearing a mask, I now can't, that might not be the same person.
Right.
And then that person could try to enter multiple times. Like, this is how you could try to game it. You could try to enter yourself 100 times so that way you can vote for yourself in the election. But guess what? You can't, because the video calls are all simultaneous. The election occurs, each round occurs at the same time. So if you're attempting to be multiple people, good luck having multiple conversations, synchronously, to pitch yourself to people who are going to ask you questions at the same time. But these are not asynchronous elections, they're synchronous. So that's great civil protection.
I mean, to me, the timing on this as well seems pretty good. I guess West Coast US is going to be rough. That's going to be like, it's going to be like 6 a.m. In the morning. But like Australian time, from GenerEOS point of view, AEST, that'll be 9, 10, 11 p.m. on Saturday night. So that's not too bad. An hour of your time, you can still get to bed by midnight. I know a lot of blockchain people rise and rise and sleep quite early. But yeah, I mean, Europe kind of middle of the day on a Saturday, early morning Eastern Standard on the North American continent. So I think it's a pretty decent, spread across the globe.
Yeah, it's hard to be perfect, right? But and if you show up for the first round, it's like an hour. It's an hour commitment. If you're trying to go to distance, each round is 50 minutes, and there'll be 3-ish rounds. So plan a few hours if you're going to try to actually make a run for it. You've got a project, have a comfy chair, or make sure you got a snack. I don't know how much time there is between rounds. Might only be like 10 minutes. So it's a bit of a marathon. That's what I've realized. The first election, I didn't realize how much of a marathon it was. I was getting antsy in my chair. So make sure you transition to a standing desk if you need to.
Well, and the best part, not the best part, but I have to make this joke. The best part is that, like, unlike the real world elections where everyone has to line up at the same washroom and wait at the same, at the same little cafe to get their coffee, and basically waste all of their break time, being more stressed out because they've got to get back to your seat. You have your own private bathroom and your own, private coffee maker in your house.
Hopefully. I'll be using mine, not to worry. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's a fun experience. And at a minimum, like, it's just, it's a conversation. You're in a room with 3 or 4 other people, and you're just going to talk, and and hopefully they're people who have similar views as you do about some things. You can have off-topic conversations. It doesn't have to all be about EOS. So it's a neat experience that way. It's nothing like a traditional. Using the word voting is almost wrong in a way, because it places this side sort of these images of traditional voting and traditional democracy. It's better to call it delegating, because you're just delegating your voice to the person who moves on. You're delegating your opinion. You're delegating your authority to the person who moves on to represent you. So it's meant to be a conversation and build relationships.
And again, just to clarify, like, if nobody in the room wants to move on, you hang out, you chill out, and somebody else moves on. Now, one other thing that I do want to clarify here, in case it's the first time, is if you're unsure whether you might want to move on or not, there was a problem last time in my election, because I wasn't planning on moving on, and then I was like, oh, fuck it, you know what, I'll do it. I've got an idea, I can do it. But then I ended up not moving on because nobody in our group had recorded that. So is it still, I just want to ask, is it still the group's responsibility or the individual's responsibility to record, or is this, become an automated service?
That is a question I'm not sure the answer. Well, so yes, someone needs to record. If you want to move forward, there needs to be a recording of it. Otherwise, we don't know, right? So that's part of the requirements. There has to be a recording of the discussion. And so if you plan to move forward, you're definitely incentivized to record it for yourself, just so you have a copy. I don't know, however, if it's automated or not through Zoom. I'm not positive. I can't recall what the answer was to that. It may be auto-recorded. I think Zoom has some functionality to auto-record some of these, so perhaps it is auto-recorded. But I'm guessing it's not,
because Yeah, my guess is it's not. I thought maybe Clarion did something with it, but I could be wrong. But it seems rather difficult to auto record every single Zoom meeting that you're not involved in onto a central server. I don't think that's
they've done some magic with Zoom. I don't know, but it is Zoom right now. They're not tied. The whole process is not tied to Zoom. This is the
right.
Eden, the contract, like the on-chain things does not. This is not going to be dependent on Zoom forever. And the other thing is, if you get into a call and all of a sudden Zoom doesn't work, you can see in your web app who the people are, and you could ping them. You can find them. Everyone's got their Telegram account tied to their accounts. So you could also be like, hey, I can't get into the Zoom. I've set up a Google or Teams, whatever. Can you guys join me here? That can.
I wonder if I would make more money being a professional fudster than I do doing what I'm doing now. Because like I could totally like, man, did you hear about this Eden thing? Like, what happens when Zoom goes down? It's totally dependent on Zoom. Yeah. I mean, I can just hear the cries from the
It's just a video call. Yeah, it'll be, and eventually, who knows what the Clarion team, they might have video things with their app, which is a communication tool, a decentralized communication tool.
I'm super excited about seeing what they bring out, right? Like, this is an old school team that's been working behind the scenes before EOS was, in a way, before EOS was even a thing, right? They're running off of, older blockchain, and they've been around. They haven't done much in the way of being a proper social kind of media network, which is where I think they were originally set up. But I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they were porting into this new technology to be able to handle, what's up and coming with elections and things like that. So I'm really excited to see, how this new adaptation of what they're doing, fits into the whole governance election process model.
For sure. Yeah. Big things coming.
And yeah, I think one last final thing I want to say is what I like about this is, like, potentially, like you said, you could run on a platform and allocate some of those funds, for example, to give away to yourself, to pay yourself, to be able to dedicate more time to like bringing about revolution in the world by promoting Eden on EOS. It allows for that capacity. It allows for all of these different capacities to be able to fund projects, to be able to, get funding. So definitely, if this is your first time sitting around listening to anything on Eden on EOS, go and do a little bit of research. Listen to some of the videos that Chris Barnes has been putting out on various channels, some of these talks that you've had with other members of the community, some of the issues that have been faced leading up to this. And I'm really excited to see how all of these things have kind of transpired, I guess, a week from now, essentially. It's the 1st of October here for me. So yeah, like you said, the 9th, how all of these things are going to, come together, and really looking forward to it. I hope that you'll come back and have an interview with me or with us, and talk about, like, what was different and how did it work out in this first election proper. I don't know what we're calling it, but I've decided to hashtag it first election proper because I just
sounds good.
I like it.
It is, yeah. So, and like you say, people who aren't familiar, you don't need to be a dev to do well. I'm not a dev, and there's a lot of people who aren't devs. Josh Seymour, he's on the chief delegate from the last trial election, not a dev. Felix Ruiz, he's a content creator. He does some YouTube videos. He wasn't a dev. He made it to the final round. And then Ami Haynes, he did win the sortition, the random winner from the last trial election. He is a developer, but 3 out of 4 not developers. So you can just have some great ideas and passion, and you want to see EOS become better, and you've got some ideas. And even if you're just a project manager and you want to help just delegate funds in that respect, you don't have to actually be a coder yourself to do well. So certainly encourage people to participate and come share their ideas.
Well, I actually think that's in a way, we should have ended there because that was a great little speech, but I just want to, I think in a way that's the beauty of it, right? Because if we look at a lot of these people who are devs behind the scenes, either A, they just, don't really enjoy going out there and talking in public, or B, they don't have time. Look at some of the best builders, like John Heater's one of them, right? Like, he's been doing things in the space for a long time, head down, working to code. certain aspects. You look at you look over, you know, across the waters at someone like Mr. Cox over there doing all the gray mass stuff. You know, Mr. LaRose over there now with the EOS Foundation. You know, you've got the Ching Tai team who's been, you know, working hard on like tokenization of various assets. We don't really see them out in the public eye. So if there's a project that you're involved with that really speaks to you, and you want to allocate funds towards, you know, helping them, you know, hire more devs or building out that ecosystem to get you to where you want to be or where you want to see that project a little bit quicker, then that's within your rights as a person who's running in this election, which is exactly essentially what you did. You saw a need, you saw someone trying to build something, you know, that fixed that need, and that's where your funds were decided to go. So like, I think it goes a long way to say you don't have to be a dev. In a way, it might actually be better if you're not, because I mean, you know, devs are kind of focused on, you know, what they're doing, and if you're focused on promoting that and getting that up and running, they're going to be more thankful than just you showing up every day with your smile, right? That's nice too, but
hey.
All right,
well said.
Thanks for joining us. The links are below. Please join you know, Chris on Twitter, follow his socials, keep up to date. And we'll see you guys all, I don't know, at least next month. We're going to do one of these monthly, but might even up the ante and do a couple every month. But we'll see you guys on the next GenPool Spotlight. Thanks. Cue the music that we don't have. Whatever song is your favorite song, play it in the back of your head. And as we roll this out, and pretend that the reason that we're not doing it is just because we're giving you the autonomy to live your lives and play your own soundtrack in your head that you all deserve to have.